Yeah, we are live.
Thank you, Kranti. Hi, team. In our previous session, we have seen just the overview of Abbyy. Like we had couple of already created elements, we had couple of blocks, and then how to export that into a AFL, and then how to import that into a document definition, and how to generate the FC dot, which we will be used by any other third-party applications that might be a UiPath activities or any other API calls which we can call it. We have seen those things in the overview session. Today, let's deep dive into the Flexi Layout Studio and let's see what all the properties we do have in the Flexi Layout Studio, along with what and all the different types of elements we do have which are supporting from the Abbyy, and how to make use of those kind of different elements to extract each and every data which is there in the any of the invoices or any of the unstructured or the semi-structured documents from the Abbyy Flexi layout. Right, so let me start from the beginning. So I'm just closing the Flexi layout. You can just go ahead, start from Flexi Layout Studio. So when you open the Flexi Layout Studio, you can just create your own new project or open the project. So for now, I'm just opening the project because of the sample. By default, the sample will not be available. You just have to when I click on, so this will be your file where you can just pick up the new invoices or any of the training samples which can be processed, right? And let's see the properties first. This is my project properties. When you create a new project, it's important to define the project properties. So here for the sample, I have just one single page of documents or the invoice. But there are chances where you will be having a multi-page documents. And how to deal with the multi-page documents is in the project, in the Flexi layout properties, you have to select allow multi-page documents. And if you're sure about the maximum number of pages in that specific document, you can just mention it. And if you're not aware of how many number of pages it might come unexpectedly, then you can just mention it as INF. INF is the maximum number of pages automatically detecting from the Abbyy, right? And then I'll show you guys on a couple of other properties where you can just see here we do have the different types, right? The text type is a typographic by default. You can just select Max Printer and the typewriter based on the element you guys can expect. For example, if you guys are processing any of the transcripts or the marks cards, so those things basically will comes into the type of the typewriter, not as a typographic, right? I'm just giving the examples. So there might be a chances where couple of people are using very old scanning documents properties where it is just going to generate a matrix printer. So in that case, this is not a radio button. This is a checkbox. You can select all of them. It is just going to first extract the text in order. First, it will try to match with the typographic, and then check the results, and then it's going to check for the matrix printer and also the typewriter. Whenever it's going to match with the specific type of the text, it is just going to pick it up and then it is going to return the results. And I do have this pre-recognition mode, fast, balanced and thorough. So this is going to affect by default from the Abbyy everywhere the pre-recognition mode will be balanced, where it will take some amount of time to recognize the file as soon as you process it or as soon as you add it to the batches, right? But if you make it as thorough, when you can see this difference is when you have a very bad quality of the sample, which we will be seeing again in our upcoming sessions, like how to take the very bad quality of the samples and how we can improve those images by using an image pre-processing, and then how this balanced and thorough pre-recognition mode is going to help us to get the better results when we have a bad quality of the samples and all of those things. But whenever we do have a decent quality of the inputs to be processed, balanced will work always, right? And also the languages. We have almost like 265 plus languages supported by Abbyy. So you can just go ahead and check any number of checkboxes from this drop down. So here you can just see list of all the languages which will be supported by the Abbyy, right? For now, this is the English. I just left it the English. And yes, if you have any barcodes and if you have any QR codes that you want to read, you can just go ahead and check them here. Those also we will be looking for them also in our advanced training to how to read the QR code and barcodes and all of those things. And even if we have anything like a Chinese, Japanese, and Korean languages, we have to just go ahead and enable these modes also. And we have this option to read the text vertically, and also we have an option to read the text horizontally. So you can just go and make those changes in the properties, pre-recognition properties, right? And then we do have the constants, input parameters, and the output parameters. If you want to read any of the data, you can just go ahead and add it from the input parameter, and the output parameter, if you want to pass any data from the Abbyy, you can just put it in the output parameter. And then the protection, this will be the authorization licenses for this specific layout, right? This is about just the general properties of the Flexi Layout Studio. I'm just going to click on apply and I'll click on OK. So as soon as you apply all the properties which are needed for the Flexi Layout Studio, you will be just adding this image. And after adding the image, if you double click, the window will be open. This is my image, right? So now, before I start developing the layout, I just have to check whether it is recognizing or not, and whether it is a readable format or not. There are multiple ways to do it. One of the easiest way to do it is we have this word recognition. If you just click on these things, the whole document, whenever it is able to identify some text or the words, it is going to highlight in this yellow, light yellow color or orangish yellow color. And if you want to read what exactly it is reading or what exactly it is recognizing, you can just go ahead and click on them. And you can also right click and copy if you want to, if you want to copy the same text which has been extracted, right? And so now let's go and create the elements and see what is the structure of the Flexi layouts which we will be extracting, right? So, and also, not only about the words. If you want to, like, for example, I can take this separators. Separators is nothing but the lines. So whether it is a horizontal line or the vertical line, you will be able to identify them also from the Abbyy. So if I just click on these lines, so the lines has been highlighted in the green color. So that is nothing but I will be able to extract these lines also as a separator, and I can also define the relations by using this separators. So we can just go ahead and check what and all the options we do. I mean, whether it is able to recognize the barcodes, whether it is able to recognize the lines and the words and so on by using a Flexi Layout Studio, right? Yeah, there are two ways to create a blocks and the elements. What is blocks and what is elements? So here we do have two sections, right? One is for blocks and another one is for the elements. Such elements will be containing list of all the elements which may used for the references and also which has been extracted as values. But blocks are the set of values which we will be exporting to a AFC file, AFL file. That is nothing but whatever the blocks which we have created, only those values will be visible in the output. Even if we have created hundreds of elements, hundreds of values has been extracted, and if we have not created any of the single blocks, then definitely we will not be able to see even a single result in the output. So make sure whenever you are creating any of the elements, the output should be created as a block, and the output elements has to be mapped to each and every block which we have created so far, right? So that's about the Flexi layout structure, blocks, and the elements. And as I said, there are two ways to create any of the elements. So there is here there is one simple tool. What I can just do is like I can just select this and I'll drag and drop here. And when I drag and drop, it is going to ask me which kind of element I want to create here. So invoice, I know this is a reference and I know this is always a static. So what I can just do is like I will click on static and I'll select OK. And this static element has been created. And okay, I'm sorry. I think I have created an element which is there in the neglected element. Okay, so I'm going to just select this specific layout, the alternative layout, also the layout which we call, and then I'll just select this and I'm just going to draw this and I'm just going to select the static text. And here the number of surviving hypothesis, it's always good to make the number of surviving hypothesis as 1, because when I'm trying to extract the word called invoice, there are chances where the invoice has been repeated multiple times. So here itself, if we just look at this, we have this invoice, and we have multiple times. So when I give some number of surviving hypotheses is more than 1, and if we are searching with the fuzzy logic, then there might be a chances where the Abbyy engine might go and extract multiple elements with the same static text. So we are just going to make sure we are going to create only one hypothesis. And we do have the properties like full name, comments, optional, required, and prohibited elements. What is optional, what is required, and what is prohibited elements? When are we going to use these combinations? Is when I make it as a required, right? So whatever the elements which I made it as a required element in the whole document, those elements must be there in the documents when it is started processing. When we make it as an optional, then it's okay, even that specific element is found or not found, it's okay. But when we make it as required and that must be available, if that specific element is not found in the document, then Abbyy will be considering that as an exception. And what is prohibited element? Prohibited element is nothing but where I'll be using this element to avoid matching if that specific element is found. How can I use that? Is, for example, here I'm processing the invoices and I might also expect a receipt, which is kindly quite different from the invoices, right? And I'm creating a project called invoice, and inside of the invoice I do not want any of the receipts to be processed. Even the required element is even if I define the required element as an invoice for this, and the receipt might also contains the keyword called invoice, in that case, even though it contains the required elements called invoice, but it also contains the keyword called a receipt. If that is a receipt, I don't want that to be processed under the invoice. In that case, what I can just do is like I can just create one prohibited element as a static, and then I can just add it as a receipt. Then when Abbyy scans the document and whenever it finds the word called receipt, then it's automatically going to kick it out from the processing. So these are the differences between the optional, required, and the prohibited. So let me make it as invoice as a required element, and this is a static text tab. We do have a different options in the static text tab, where you can just define what is that text needs to be extracted, and it is not mandatory that you have to go ahead and give this text always. You can just, if there is something in the database, for example, there are a couple of words you just have to check in the whole document which will be coming from the database. Let's consider I have some number of states basically, which will be which I can just maintain that states of list in the database, and whenever there is any such kind of data which is available in that specific space, I want to extract that as a state, right? Because I don't want any of the false state name to be extracted inside of the value. In those cases, we can like which can be handled either in the data set values or can also be handled in the database level. So basically, the Abbyy will always be integrated with the SQL automatically whenever we are buying the licenses. In that specific SQL version we do have, in that we can just create our own table. And in that specific table, we can just make a list of all the texts so that we can just search for, we can just connect using the connection string, and then write one small query to pick all that by using that specific database, right? Which we will be seeing in our further classes when it goes for the advanced things. And also like search from the text file. So obviously how we have the config files in our UiPath or something, where we will give the access to the user. So here also what we can just do is like, if the input is always going to be vary, or the vendor names, when it comes to the invoices, if the vendor name is might always the vary, and other than the vendor name, if everything else is same, which we can expect, then what we can just do is like, we can just create one simple text file and give that specific text file access to the business or our customers, so that if there is any new vendor comes in, they're just going to add that specific keyword to that specific text file, and we will be able to just pick that value from the text file. And then if that specific text file is found, then we can go ahead and process it. But when you guys are using this kind of data, you guys have to make sure that variable values or the data from the database or the data from the text file might be different, but the layout should be always similar for the one which we have created, right? If the layout is different for all the values which they'll be adding, then definitely that's going to be failed. So we will be looking into all this in detail in the further sessions. And then maximum number of errors. So in this, for example, I have invoices, right? And there might be a chances where my OCR or the scanned copy of this file is too bad. So basically the standard scanning level of each and every input file which goes for a Abbyy is required for 300 dpi. 300 dpi is the standard one where we can expect a decent results from the Abbyy. For example, there are a couple of people where they just scan their input files with 70 dpi or 80 dpi. In those cases, definitely there might be a chances where my asterisk might be reading as a star, or my ash might be reading it as an asterisk. Right? If there are some chances, then definitely I can add how many number of maximum percentage of the errors to work with this specific errors which I might expect. So by default it will be 20, or by default it would be 30 sometimes. So you can just go ahead and make those modification. And yes, here we are saying only one line. The static test, it's in only one line. But there are chances where the static word has been divided into two lines. For example, here I have a unit price in a single line, and there are chances where my unit price might be divided into a unit in the first line and the price in the second line. In those cases also, we will be able to extract the whole unit price into a single element by using this. Take spaces into the account and then permit multiple lines, and you can just give the line break penalty and then permit missing words, how many number of missing words you want to allow, or if you just don't want to allow any of the missing words and you want to perform the actions only when the 100% of accuracy has been received. Those are the properties where you can just go ahead and set here. So since this is my just a simple word, I'm not using this multiple line options. And also I do have this whole words only and the match cases. When am I going to use the whole words only here? Just the best example which I can take is when we are extracting the gender, there might be a chances where we have the male and the female. And the female word also contains the word male, right? So, and let's consider male and the female will be there in the single search area. Basically, there won't be much different in the search area. So in that case, what might happen is whenever I'm trying to search, let's consider here is a female and here is a male, and I'm searching in this whole area because I do not have any other things to specify the relations to restrict the search areas. In that case, what happens is even the part of the female, that is nothing but the male, can also be read it as a male, or there might be a chances the vice versa, right? So in that case, I can just go ahead and use whole words only. When I use the whole words only, then it is going to pick only the word male when I'm searching for the male, and it is going to ignore the part of the female I mean the word male in the female when I make use of the whole words only. So make sure when you guys are working with very small words, and there might be a chances those small words might expected in any of the other texts, make sure you guys are using the whole words only and the match cases. So for example, when I want to extract this invoice, right? I know this invoice are always in the capital letters, and I don't want this invoice to match with this invoice. In that case, what I can just do is like here, if I give the match cases, then it is going to search for the exact word which we have written here. And if we do not give the match cases, we can just go ahead and then search with the other elements too. So now I'll show you how this works. And the search constraints. If you know exactly where the values will be, in which specific position, in which specific page, you can just always go ahead and write them here. I want to extract the values from the first page. And then, for example, I'm extracting the invoice from here. And there might be a chances. I'm sorry. And there might be a chances where my OCR recognition is too bad, the quality of sample is too bad, and it failed to recognize this constant values. In that case, what we can just do is like, I'll take the first toppest value as the invoice number, and then below of the bottom of that invoice number as an invoice date. In that, I'm making sure I'm not going to extract the invoice number again for the invoice date. I can exclude those region elements here, like whatever the elements which we have created so far. So all these things we will be adding while we developing the whole project one by one. And then the relations. Relations takes really a very important role when it comes to an Abbyy, right? Relations is the window where we are going to define the search area for the specific elements which we are going to process. So I'll show you the differences. Let's say I want to extract the invoice which is nearest to the top edge. And then I'm going to click on OK. As soon as you create an element, it's good to test. So I have tested now, and I'll click on invoice. So if you just look at this, the invoice which is there in the very top is identifying. But what I wanted to extract is this one, but not this one, right? So what I'll do is like, I'll just go here and I'll make the match cases, and I'll decrease this to 15. And then I'll click on apply. Okay, control save, control E. And then when I click on the invoice, it came to the exact word which I wanted to extract. So this is how with each and every properties using which are available in each and every elements, to make sure you guys are working with the specific elements, not messing up with the other unexpected elements. So that's the reason it's always good, as soon as you create an element, just make sure you have just matched that once with the layout, and then check which is the specific elements which is actually extracting, right? So this is about a very basic introduction about the properties and the element, how it works and other stuffs. And when it comes to the layout, this is my whole layout, and which contains my header and footer and the elements. There is a wrong notion that there are a couple of people, they got confused about the header and the footer. Yes, header and the footer is going to indicate the starting and the ending of the whole document. but it does not define here it has to start at or here it has to end. It only indicates the page. For example, if I had taken in the header, I'm just going to define add element, static text, and I'll mention invoice. And then I'll just make it as one, and I'll make it as a required element. And then I'll go to the static and I'll check invoice and sorry, invoice. I'll make whole words only and I'll make the match cases. And the maximum percentage error is 10. I'm just going to give the relation as nearest to the page stoppage, right? So if I define this and then do Control E, I'm able to get the header as an invoices. So why are we going to define the header? Is when there might be a chances where we will be expecting the input from multiple inputs. In those cases, whenever I'm just scanning my input and I'm just sending it through the scanner to some of the emails. So definitely there are chances where Abby can read the input file from the emails also and process them. In that, there are chances if any of the scanning owner has been set that, or let's consider the best example of fax. When we do the fax, always the first page of the fax will contains the fax detail from whom it came, for whom it came, on what time it came. So the first page always contains the fax details and whatever the document which needs to be done, that actually comes in after this fax details, right? But when I'm extracting the data, I don't care about the fax details. I do not want to extract any of the fax details. I just want to start with the invoice and start extracting the data. So in that case, if I define this invoice in the header, it is going to consider, okay, this is my first page. Whenever in the whole document, wherever I am finding invoice, as a first instance, that will consider that page as a header. That page will be a starting point. And also the footer. So basically, where we can just use a footer. Footer, even the invoice has been extended to a multiple pages. Basically, this balance due and the amount paid will be the very last element, even after 3 or 4 pages when the invoices went through, right? So I can just go ahead and define the footer here. Add element, static text, and I'll just do balance due, and then I can just make it as 1. Go to the static text. So you don't have to type it every time here. What you can just do here, like, so you can enable the words and then you can right click, copy, and then come here and paste. So this also works. It's not necessary that you always have to type each and everything, right? And then I'll go to the relation and I'll just do nearest to the page bottom edge. And I'll click on apply and OK. And then I'm just going to process it. So that's my header and this my footer. So that is nothing but wherever the Abby was able to find the balance due, it will consider that page as a last page. And whenever there is Abby is going to find the invoice, it will be considering that as a first page. So that's about the header and the footer. It is not necessary that it should contain only one word. You can just add any number of static words or even any type of the words. If you want to add, go ahead and feel free to just go ahead and add multiple elements to the header and the footer. Next it comes to the elements. What I would prefer personally, it is not standard or it is not mandatory that you should use the same way. But as a developer, what I would prefer to go with is a grouping. So what I would do is like I'll just go ahead and I'll create a group, and I'll create a group called static words or static references. So group is nothing but a container where you can just add any number of other type of elements inside of the group. So what I personally prefer is I'm just going to create 2 different groups in which in the static reference group, I'm just going to extract all the static values from the whole documents. and also the separators basically. And I'm going to create another group, and instead of that I'm just going to extract all the values. So this is my personal preferences, you guys can follow it, or it is left to you. And all other properties are same, the search constraints, relations, advanced, and the errors. Advanced will come back later again, where we can just go ahead and write our own code. Instead of we adding all the properties here in each and every tab, we can just go ahead and write our own code to presearch or the post-search performance, right? Which we will be coming back later in the advanced sessions. Okay. So in the group, I'm just going to add a couple of elements, like I'm just going to extract the static word again, the invoice date, and then I'm just going to make it as one invoice date. And now it comes to the relation. So now, anyway, I have this invoice which is already extracted. Now I can define the relation with the elements which are already created. You can use any elements, whether it is created inside of a header, whether it has been created inside of the footer, or you just have created just an element. You can just go ahead and use any of them to define this. And I know this invoice date, which is actually below of this invoice keyword, right? And you are able to see this small window. So if you're very confused to define any of the values, you can just click on this, right? So when I close, if you click on choose, it is going to define what is right, what is center, what is left. And from left, what is the zero offset, what is the positive offset, what is the negative offset. This is the way you will be able to get to know. This is for the left, this is for the right, above and the below. If you are getting so confused, you can always go ahead and refer this, right? And this is the blue color is nothing but the reference element. For example, to define this invoice date, I'll be taking this invoice number as a reference element. So now whatever this blue color indicates is my invoices. And definitely what I want is the below, right? Below of this reference element. So in this, what I can just do is like the bottom, right? So what I want either with the zero offset or with a positive offset, because this is my invoice number and my invoice date is somewhere below this. So either I can choose this or this one. So my relations looks like this. This is my reference element. I have to traverse below with the offset, with some offset or the zero offset. So let's see how to define that. Below, I can just make it as whole or the bottom, which is mentioned in that specific graphic. And now I'm just going to mention as 25 pixels. How I'm going to get how many number of pixels I have to work, right? And I'm not sure like how many number of pixels I have to give. So in that case, what you can just do is like you can click on that specific element where you want to process and then drag it. So if you just drag your mouse in this, you will be able to see these dashed lines, right? As your mouse pointer travels, you will be able to see here as how many number of dots your point has been processed. And this is nothing but the offset, right? This is x and x and y axis. So what I can do is like I'll just click here and drag and drop. So in here, the difference between my first element bottom and the second element top is around some 20. So I can make it as 25, which is no harm. So with the reference of this invoice, and then click on add relation. See, it is able to identify exactly where it is trying to search. And then I'm just going to add multiple relation again above of the bottom of the first element. And yes, so here if we just see, I'll go to the above and definitely I have to traverse back, right? So this is my above of the bottom and I want to traverse back. So I have to give the negative offset again. So what I can just go here is like I'll just click, drag and drop till due date. It is 183. So I can define till 1 minus 175. So it will be able to search so far. And then with the invoice, correct. And then save I'm just going to define one more. Right of the left of this invoice. I don't want with respect to this invoice. Let me consider with the invoice header. So invoice header, then again it's same thing. I have to traverse little bit back from the element which is available. So I'm just going to define minus 250. Add relation, and then I'm going to add one more relation, left of the right of the invoice element with minus 50, right? So now I have defined 4 different elements, and each one of them can be seen here. If you want to see like the concatenation of each and every element is, you can just shift and select all of them, right? When you do shift and select all of them, it is going to create you a graphical representation of the searching area where exactly you are searching for that specific element when you are defining, right? So here you will be able to see the graphical area where exactly in this specific square I'm just trying to get this invoice state. So this is about the relations, how you can just make use of the existing elements to create other elements, right? So I'm just going to quickly create a few more static texts like due date, and then I'm just going to make it as this one. Left and right is fine. I'm just going to define this with respect to the invoice state. Okay, and then add changes. Again, I'm just going to define with respect to date. Apply. Okay, control save, control E. If I just select this whole elements, I'm able to get, oh, okay, I got it. So I did not change the due date basically. Due date, and then apply. Okay, control save, control E, and I'm just going to select this. I'm able to get all this, and I want to extract couple of these values also. So I'm just going to add few more, add element, static text again, and then subtotal, and I'm just going to make it as one static text, and then subtotal, and then I'll go here, add define above of the top of the footer. So basically I have this footer which has been defined as a balance due. I'm going to pick it up with the relation around some 50. Okay, I can take 150, and then add relation, and then I can make it as nearest to the page bottom edge. Apply. Then again I can add couple of things like right of the left of the balanced due. So that is nothing but my footer balanced due with minus 50, right? Add relation, apply. Okay, control save, control E. I'll take this. I'm able to get this subtotal also. Okay, and now I'm just going to take these elements. Okay, let's see. Let's how else I can do this. I mean, how different values we can get it. Right. This I'm just going to make it as static references, right? Now I'm going to add one more group called values. So instead of values, I can just go ahead and add any number of values we want to extract. So now in this we have like 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of values. One is currency, one is date, and one is just a number, and we will be able to get this address as a paragraph. Let's see how to create those 4 kind of values, and also let's see how to creation of the tables also, right? So instead of the values, I can just go ahead and click on add element and select a character string. So if you are sure about the type of the element, you can just always go ahead and select that specific elements basically. If you are not sure and if you just want to extract whatever the value which is available, and then you do the validations and then filtering in the document definition, that is also possible. So to extract the invoice number, I'm just going to take it as a characteristic, because there are a chances where couple of invoices are just contains the number, but there are a couple of invoices where I might expect hyphen along with the alphanumeric values. So that's the reason I have taken this as a character string, and then I'll make it as invoice value, and I'll make this number of surviving hypothesis as 1, and then I'll go to the character string. In each and every element you create in Abbyy, I mean the different elements which you are going to create in Abbyy, the only difference in each and every element is always the second tab. The second tab will be the properties which are associated with each and every element which we are going to create. So if you just look at the properties differences between the static element and the characteristics element, and the var or it's also called a character string, is nothing but the general is same, the search constraints is also the same, relation is also the same, advanced is also the same. The only difference is the static elements contains the property called static text, and the character string contains the property called character string. Here also, if you want to define the set of specific characters, you can just go ahead and specify them in the alphabets as a set of characters. Or if you want to go with the pattern matching, you can always go with the pattern matching. So how to use a regular expression? So there are multiple regular expressions, VBA based, C# based, or based on 64 bits. So we do have the different types of regexes, right? What you can just do is like simple, you can just create here, and if you want, you can just select here uppercase letter, just one letter. If you want to repeat that, you can just click on repeats. Minimum value is 2, maximum value will be at 10, something like this, and click on OK. It is just going to generate the regular expression here itself. You don't have to worry about much. So if you want to set from the character set, I want that data to be, it should be there only in this. So I can just go ahead and specify this character set from which it has to extract. Whether it is a letter or a digit, if you are not sure, you can just go ahead and pick that X, and then you can also mention how many number of minimum repeatants and the maximum repeatants. So this is how you can just go ahead and build your own regex for Abbyy here itself in the small window. So for now, I'm not going to use any of the regular expression. Let's go with the general, and we'll come to the regular expression when we are working with the different types of documents where actually how to use that, when to use it. The specified use cases we will be bringing them up in our advanced sessions. So let's go with the basics now. I'm going to select all, and then whole words only. If you select whole words only, then it will be just picking the whole word as a single word. If this word has been divided into a 2 or 3, for example, if it contains any of the spaces in between, then it is not going to consider as a whole words only. But whole words only is also depending on the space, maximum space length which you are going to define, right? So for example, here in invoice space hash, we have the space. But the space length is just around some 10 or maximum of 20 pixels. But here I have given the maximum length of space length is 50. So here, even if I give the whole words only to extract this invoice number, it is going to extract. But here the space in between the price and the quantity is 138. So in this case, these two values will not considered as a whole words only. So when you are using the whole words only, so make sure you guys are taking care of this maximum space length which you are going to define, right? So I'll take this whole words only, and if you want to restrict the minimum number and the maximum number, you can always go ahead and specify them here. Well, this with respect to the characters and this with respect to the word count. And then here I'm just going to define the relation right side of the right end of the invoice number, and then above of the top of the invoice date, right? And then add below of the top of the invoice number. I'm just going to define a very small offset of 25. So even if it is just going a little above and below, it's going to handle it, right? And you can just also define two more, like above the bottom with minus 25, save changes, apply, okay, control save, and I'll do control E. So now the invoice value has been extracted. So this is about the character string element. So now let's see how to use a date value. Add element, I'm going to pick up the date. So invoice date is a date, I know. So here I'm just going to mention it as an invoice date, and then I'll give the reference as 1 and I'll go to the date. And in the date, I will be able to mention the exact format of the date, whether it is always a day, month, year. So if we just see, this is not a day, month, year. This is a month, day, and the year. It is not necessary that you should choose only one. If you're not sure about the specific format, you can just select all these things. So it is just going to extract any of this format. And in the document definition, you can just write a script, like how we can just get the date and then convert that into a specific format using a C# code. You will be able to just do that specific conversion also by using the scripts. So, but here, since I'm sure about this, I'll be just going with the month, day, and the year, and also the month. So if you're sure about the pattern, you can just select one specific. If you're not sure about things, you can just select all of them, right? Let me consider that also now for now. And you can just give the interval. So if you're expecting any of the dates, for example, we will be processing some of the data, and we are sure, and the condition is the date of birth must be less than 2000, right? If that is the condition which I want to process it. And whenever I'm trying to read the data of the date of birth, I can restrict this. Here it is 2100. You can always restrict 1231 2000, 1999, or 1/1/2000. So you can just restrict the date interval also from the minimum and to the maximum. And which language you want to read, you can just choose it. And what are the separators? Basically, the standard has been already added. But if anyone, for example, if they're just using a space, you can just go ahead and add the spaces over here. And then the maximum space length, which you can be expect from each and every, the distance between the month, date, and the year, right? Search constraints, for now, I'm not having any such things. I'm just going to define the relation, right? Write off the invoice date, and then add below of the bottom of the previous value which is found, add, and also I can add above of the top of the due date static text, and also I can define above the bottom of the invoice date with minus 25, and I can just copy paste and change from below of the top and click on OK, save changes, apply, okay, control E, and I'm able to get this date, exact date in the specified format which I have extracted. So I'm just going to quickly add another date as a due date, and I'm going to define the relations for this. Same pattern, I'm not going to change any of those things, right, which works. and above of the bottom, above the top is not going to work. I'm just going to remove this. Okay, you can just select and remove, yeah. And then above of the bottom of, sorry, not the subtotal, due date, and then below of the top of the due date, and then the right of the right, and then you can take below of the bottom of the previous found element. Add, and then you can just also add the top edge. Apply. Okay. Control save, Control E. I'm able to get the due date as well, right? So now we have seen two different types of output elements which we have created. Let's consider another element, okay, called a currency. Add element, I'm going to pick the currency, right? I'm just going to define it as 1 and I'll say balance due. And the currency, if you guys are sure with specific values you are expecting, you can just leave them and delete the other stuffs. So here I'm just processing the US invoices. I can just go ahead and remove all this other types of the currencies, that is euros and the prefix for the euros which we are going to use. And then minimum value and the maximum value, which you can just go ahead and mention it. And the fractional part separator, basically it will be like dot and the comma separators. If you want any of those things, if you want to define any of with specific values, whether it contains the negative values and all of those things, you will be able to go ahead and have it. So even if you want to allow the values, even if the fractional value is missing, you can just select this. And even if the separators is missing, if you want to add it, you can just go ahead and add it. Maximum length, and then you can also use like which part of the element should contains the currency names, right? And then go to the relation. I'm just going to define the relation to extract the balance due. Above of the bottom of the balance due, which is there in my footer, with minus 25 or 30, which works. Add, Control C, Control V, below of the top, and then I'm going to define another right of the right with some 50, right? Save changes, apply, okay, Control save, Control E. And when I click on the balance due, my currency has been extracted. And I know this is of the type of the currency, right? So now we have seen three different types of elements. So let us go ahead and extract the value of the type of paragraph. For example, this is the address which I want to extract. I know address is always will be in the paragraph. So I do have the element called a paragraph, add element. Click on the type paragraph, and then I'll just make it as address, right? ADDRESS, address. I'll make it as 1. In the paragraph, you can mention the minimum and the maximum line count. So I'm just going to maximum line count as 4. So now here it is 3. If you're expecting that with 5 or 6, you can just go ahead and mention these things. And the alignment, if you have any of the specific alignment left, right, and those things, you can just always go ahead and mention that. This one is the left alignment. I have taken this as a left alignment. And then you can also mention the minimum line height, maximum line height, and the width also, so that you will be just making sure you will not be extracting any of the junk in the paragraph. And if you want any of the stamps available, and if you want to remove, you can just go ahead and click on the stamps. And for example, inside of the paragraph there might be a lines. For example, after the line 1, there might be one line has been written, and also after the second line there might be one line. If you are not sure, I mean, if you have those kind of separators, you can click on ignore separators also if there are any such lines in between those things, right? So those are the additional properties which you can handle and you can go ahead and define the relations, right? So left of my header invoice with, I'll give ransom 250. So I would not prefer to give the offset more than 500. Please do not use the offsets more than 500. It's not a always good idea to have more than 400, 500 offsets. What you can just do is, like, instead of having more than 400 or 500 offsets, it's always good to find out almost all available nearest elements and extract them before you extract any of the values, and try to add as many as relations you can. So that's the best thing. Please do not stick into only one relations. This is a very simple logic and a very simple layout, so I'm just relying on one or two different relations. But please do not always depend on the single relations. It's always better to go with multiple. I would say as many as you can. More the relation, better the search results, right? And then I'm just adding another one above the top of this invoice static with some 50, and click on add relation, apply, okay, save, control E. I'm able to get the address. This is what the address has been extracted, right? So now I have extracted the values one type in each, and I have to export. I want to see these values in the output. How to see that is, you have to create a block. So definitely my invoice number is always a text. So I'll just go and create invoice number, and in the search element 1, my source element for this is the invoice value. Apply, okay. And then I want to extract the value, the invoice date. Basically, that will also be a text. I'm just going to create invoice date. My search element is the second one. I'm just going to pick and add the invoice date. Apply, okay. Control C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Due date, next. I'm going to define the due date, apply, okay, save, and then the balance balance due, and then I'm picking the second layout and mapping it to the balance due, and then I'm going to pick the address, and then go ahead and make the changes for the address, and you can just select the address as a text value, apply, okay, and then control E, and you will be seeing the output only these 5 elements you have created so far. So whatever the values which you are able to see in this green highlighted value, these are the values which you will be able to see in your output. We have so many other values which needs to be extracted. For example, this table. Obviously, the table also can be extracted in two different ways, by using an element called a table or by using a repeating group. And also there are ways to extract the checkboxes and also the checkboxes group. And how to extract those checkboxes, how to export them, how to extract the barcode, how to extract the table and the repeating groups will be continuing in our next sessions. So that's all for today. And if you have any questions with respect to creation of any types of elements or blocks, please do let me know, right?
Let's wait for 2 minutes, Divya,
Sure,
for the
Gandhi. Yep.
questions. Thank you so much, Divya, for the session.
Thank you, Kranti.
Actually,
Have a
we
great.
have a question from Sai. How to extract if PDF is very dynamic?
Okay, so if it is a basic, if it is a complete dynamic, I would not prefer to go with the layouts. But if it is a semi-structure and if it is a dynamic, for example, now I have an invoice here and the value right to it, and there might be a chances where I can just find this invoice element below of it. There are ways to handle these things also, where you will be going to create a generic layouts where instead of we creating only one element here, we will be just going to create a first found. Inside of the first found, we will be extracting all possible relations, and also by using a label elements where we will be just going to define whether it is a right side, whether it is a bottom of these things. So these things will be handled. I think we will be covering them in our upcoming sessions.
Any more questions, Sai? No, that's it, Divya. If you have any questions, our mail ID is in the description. You can contact us via email ID. We'll reply.
Yes. You can always just come back to us, and we are always ready to go ahead and help you guys. Right? Thank you,
Yes.
everyone. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you so much, Divya.